business, they really don't care if they're operating. So,
The perfect storm.
yeah,
Just
Getting about time, isn't it?
computer one went 2 minutes past.
Computer's fast.
I can't,
6:59. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
You said the same clock as your.
Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Meeting of the Wahoo City Council, Tuesday, December 27th, 7 o'clock p.m. Open Meeting Act is posted on the wall. More information is up at City Hall if you require that. Roll call, please.
Stuart Creasy.
Here.
St. Shane Sweet.
Here.
Carl Warford.
Here.
Chris Rappel.
Here.
Patrick Nagel.
Here.
Ryan Ideas.
Okay, thank you. No proclamation. Anybody in the audience have something they want to bring up that's not on the agenda? Seeing nothing, one coming in. Ask one more time. Anything from audience comments, on items that are not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move forward. Department head reports.
There's one specifically today.
Okay, consent agenda. Detail on some of that is in the packet.
On the, pay application, I believe, the change order that you see, which is a significant change order on the asphalt overlay project, is, due to, included in the original bidding documents, and thus the contract was work that we really couldn't quantify in the beginning, but wanted to have the price set in case we needed that work to be done, and the majority of that was, the concrete repairs that would need to be done after the milling was done, and there wasn't as much expected, so it change orders out those items out of the contract just to, as a final quantity cleanup, and then there's retainage included, so it is the final, change order and the final pay application. All in all, it was a very, all in all, I think, out of all of the projects that I have worked on over the years, this is probably the one, from my perspective, went the smoothest and, yeah.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Rappel.
Yes.
Creasy.
Yes.
Sweet.
yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Discussion items not requiring any action, there's none. We have a public hearing and associated action items. Hearing regarding the issuance of a Class D liquor license for Herget Oil Company doing business as Super C at 1142 North Chestnut Street, Wahoo, Nebraska. Documentation is in your packet with the process and approved by the Liquor Commission. I'll open up the public hearing. Is the owner here?
I'm the representative.
Okay, if you want to speak to it a little bit,
Sure.
please give your name and address.
My name's Joel Larson. I live at 3432 Tree Line Drive in Lincoln. And I'm with Herget Oil Company. We bought the local store here from Joe. And we're gonna pretty much keep most things the same they are. We're gonna spruce it up and this is our 11th location. We have 8 stores in Lincoln, 1 in Ceresco and 1 in Denton. Family-owned business, into the 3rd generation right now. That's about it. You have any questions for any?
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any questions or comments from the public? Public hearing. Seeing none,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
roll call on closing the public hearing.
Rappel,
Yes.
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
And
So-
what's your action?
The action would be to make a recommendation of approval or denial to the Liquor Control Commission.
Motion to approve or recommend to
Mayor,
approve?
What she said.
Recommend approval.
Second,
And usually we ask if the chief has had any problems, I'm assuming he would
We-
not have an issue.
We did discuss that in our department head report, and he had no issue.
Okay, cool.
Pretty much just clean up, new business.
we have a motion and second to submit approval. Any other questions from the council? Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Welcome to Wahoo.
Thank you, we are happy to be here.
Good, thank you. Okay, old business, consideration of conditional use permit to allow property owner to count parking stalls within the city right of way towards the required parking, or number of parking stalls for proposed apartments on property described as lots 1 through 4, parts of lots 5 through 8, and all lots 9 through 12, block 155, Wahoo, or county addition to Wahoo, and part of the vacated alley, as filed by Mike Sullivan, Lincolnshire Investments. This item and the next item, we've discussed a lot, put it that way.
And as you previously remember, we had denied a similar application. This is an amended version of that application. They're asking for less stalls than previously requested. Had proposed to do some public improvements and infrastructure to the right-of-way areas to add parking stalls above and beyond what they're proposing to be used towards their overall number. If you look through the ordinance, Melissa and I had added some various contingencies and things as options in there for you guys to kind of talk through. Melissa put together those 4 options, which I think all make sense depending on how you want to approach it. And then I added the language about the contingencies, because it's my understanding that if you do approve this, you want to make sure it's tied to the overall project that's presented to you, and that that's actually going to be constructed in that manner or fashion, which is why then we added that not only is a parking plan to be approved by the city council, which is normal, but at that time, the building plan set would also be approved. And then the on-street parking infrastructure is part of that. I know the conversation last time was, well, what if somebody comes down the road and asks for the city to grant similar leniency with respect to using the right-of-way towards the parking numbers? One of the things you would point to presumably is that there's a significant number of stalls that are being added above and beyond what's being asked to be included here. So that's why I added that. The subsection 3 is just making clear that in order to process that, we need to make sure that since those are public overnight stalls, you are talking about potentially having an overnight permit process on that side of things, that those stalls obviously have to be rented by somebody that's living on the units to be counted towards that, because we don't want to potentially, not say this would happen, but approve a project where in theory and on paper they're using those stalls, but in actuality they're not. We want to make sure that they have those number of stalls reserved for their use. So that's what subsection 3 is saying, is if they ask for, let's say, 6 stalls, then there needs to be an application for 6 on-street parking permits to account for those 6 stalls, right? And then the last thing there being, I would imagine that this is a little bit of trial and error, so where exactly you're going to tell them those particular uses need to be in terms of whether it's on the south side or whether it's on the east side, is it on the north or the the south corners on the south side, or west or east corners on the south side, where is it used? Is it handicap spaces? What is actually being utilized for those purposes? The subsection 4 is to give you some control over, and the staff some control over where those locations specifically are. So that's why I added these, and I think big picture of the question is, do you want to do this? And if you do it, then the next question is, do those contingencies make sense, and which of the options make the most sense to you guys?
So would you, if we approve the rest of it and then handle these 4 options next then, or together?
Yeah, I would say you would approve a reading of the ordinance, and if you decide to waive readings, that's fine. With the modification of that you're selecting either option 1, option 2, option 3, or option 4, so that Melissa and company know which one is gonna actually be read into the ordinance. Because those aren't options you're giving him, those are options you're
You
choosing.
were choosing, yeah.
Which of the 4 do you like the best?
I guess I'm always in favor of being, give an actual number. You know, a percentage allows for the project to creep and become bigger, and I know we don't want to do that. So, you know, to have a percentage, I guess that catches my eye right away, saying maybe not so
Well,
much.
it's based off
I
of the
look at it
west.
the way- I just think if it's a percentage, and right now we're talking, it was, if I recall, we're somewhere in the 80 mark, so it was
87.
10. If it creeps, the only way that works is as a percentage of the total allotment of parking. So if it's 80 that he can have parked right now, or 80 that fit within there, boy, for it to creep, that means he would have to find more parking spaces
Right,
for him to be allowed more outside.
right. So that's why I thought, well, if we
That
define the
makes the
parking.
footprint smaller. I mean, I don't know how that's, I don't know that could happen, I guess,
Yeah.
is my point. I just don't see
But I agree with
physically
you,
how
but
that could
you
happen.
lock in a number and say, okay, that.
Well, if we
what the-
say 10% would be 8.7 stalls, so that'd be 9 stalls. And so if you go with option 4, it's 9 stalls, or if you need 7, then he gets 7.
9
Because
hours.
that's what option 4 says, whichever is less. We say
Well, it says
9 or
required for
less.
6.
Well, option 4 says whichever is less, which means up to 6.
Yeah.
So if it went down to, you only need.
Whichever is less.
Right.
Now, on one of
So if
those,
he needs 7, he'd get 7.
No, it'd have to be
So
whatever's
it's not
less,
less.
it'd be
so
stuck at
it's
6.
whichever's less.
Yeah.
But we can control the creep
I'd say get rid
from
of
getting
that.
bigger, right, in this?
Yeah, I mean, the idea there is you are approving the final building plan set, which typically you don't do. Basically, you only approve the parking plan and you let Travis approve the building plan set. However, here, I think the only way to really link it and make sure that the apartments and where they're located and how many there are and everything else is to your satisfaction, rather than put Travis in a really tough spot, is for you to actually approve the building plan set. And so that's what presumably you're gonna do here is if he comes back and he proposes something and he says, look, you only approved up to 6 spaces, I need 8, then under that, you're either gonna have to amend the ordinance to include more, or you're gonna have to deny the building plan set.
Well, from our drawings, he was 5 short.
Yeah,
But
and I think that's why
very-
we chose
that's
6 to give
pretty
you.
preliminary to begin with. I guess that's my only concern, is that is a rough drawing, not an engineer's drawing. So you don't
Right.
know what's
Right.
gonna change in the meantime. And to Jovin's point, I just don't wanna have to come back and fix it later because we made it too tight. And we set it 6 and suddenly it's gotta be 7 or something because something inside had to be ADA or something like that and we lost a spot inside. And,
Well, only one of these options applies for, or accounts for ADA compliance.
right. Well, and I guess for me, if it's 10% and we have to have 2 more, that allows, I guess my thought was if he has to take 2 spaces inside his parking structure and turn those into ADA, or 2 becomes 3, you lose a spot, that can still be pushed outside, on the street for overall
10% would
spaces,
be
you know what I
9
mean?
stalls total. And if he uses 7, then
Because we still get to approve the parking plan down the road, where at this point, if we stop it, then we're just slowing things down again if we get in our way. The thing is, if it had to be 8, would anybody be opposed to 8 over 6? I guess that's my
I wouldn't.
my
be-
thought process.
Yeah, I'm okay with
So I
that.
mean, I would be okay with one if the number was 8. I just feel like if we saw 5, 6 is still pretty tight. You're only talking about one space difference between that drawing and reality. And I
Yeah,
just don't wanna have to amend it again later.
yeah, but like I said, if you wanna pick a number 8, I'm workable with that, but I
Yeah.
kinda like
You'd
picking a
rather have the
number.
number. I'd be okay with that.
But
But if
it's
we
like-
just did option 1 and said it's 8 instead of 6, that way we have a little extra.
Well, let me
And you
say,
control the building plan
or
set,
less.
so if you said, look, we're gonna put 8 in there, but we need to make sure we make clear to the property owner that we would like to see 5 or 6.
Right.
Well,
right?
we can say 8 or less,
You still gonna have to come in front of you, yeah,
8 or less,
Yeah.
maybe.
How
So
big
it's,
a factor
it's
is
either 8 or less.
ADA stalls?
well, so one of the questions would be, do you want to interpret into the, whether it's 5, 6, 7, or 8, that those stalls can be ADA compliant stalls? Because that does allow, as I understand Melissa's earlier point, that it maybe gives him some more flexibility by putting at least one of those ADA compliant stalls on the street.
Doesn't break my heart to have the ADA compliant stalls out on the street to begin
Yeah.
with, because we know we're gonna need them.
Well,
Especially if
especially
it's
on the south side of the
by
senior
the
center.
senior center, it makes a lot of sense.
But if it's reserved for an apartment, somebody could be parked there all day, and then the public has no use of it.
Yeah, presumably
That
you
is
would
a
want
that
multiple
would be
ones.
a risk, obviously.
Yeah,
well, I would say we need to turn around and actually place a number, and in my opinion, they need to build to the approved specifications that we give them. And so if they have to amend their building to require the required number of spaces that are given them, then that's what they need to do.
As far as the process, walk me through this. Will this be like the permit process to park there? Come into the city hall, get a tag on the rearview mirror,
Yeah,
just
so
like
if
we do
you-
now?
We'll have to work that
If
out.
you would approve 8 stalls, for instance, what to Jovan's point in this, these conditions at the bottom, he would have to come in and apply for and pay for 8 tags for him for his residents to use on the on-street parking,
Okay.
which would grant them the permission to be parked on the street overnight.
So that would be the property owner, but maybe not the vehicle owner. So it could change vehicles, or would this
yeah,
actually
they'd
be?
have to turn that tag back into him,
I guess.
and then the next time he rents that apartment,
Be
It
managed
is,
by the
the way
apartment.
the ordinance
Yeah.
is written, it is the property owner's responsibility to notify the city of changes in the vehicle that it's
Okay.
used. And
Okay.
it's not on the tenant, it's on the property owner.
Okay.
And we do have that, we have tags for 2023, we've sent notices out to property owners, so,
For the other downtown.
for the other downtown. units.
Along Maple.
With this, yes,
Again, ideally, we're talking about using all of this space, like theirs would be 8. They
Park,
count
yeah.
toward their parking, but that doesn't mean they may not, that doesn't mean they'd be held to only being able to get 8 parking permits.
Correct. Just means that they're obligated to at least have 8 permits, yeah.
Say that again?
It's not just going to, so the idea is, in order to get it, they have to have a certain amount of parking in order to get through
Yeah.
our codes, right? And we're allowing up to possibly.
Yeah, they'd have to have
say
8 for overnight.
For that,
Right.
but there may end up being more vehicles that are needed across what we have, a total of 40 stalls that'll be around those 2 streets. So they're allowed to get more than 8 passes down the line, so if they have more cars for their apartment complex, and that goes with the rest of the community as well.
like the
Then
downtown.
anybody
Downtown,
could park
that
in
anybody
downtown.
is gonna
Any
be able to
downtown
use
parking,
that.
can get the
Gotcha.
permit.
Anybody's
to
gonna
park
be
there.
able to get parking, they're just not limited to
Okay.
8.
Are we
Because
allowing
again,
that
my
overnight
concern is,
parking then?
there's
Okay.
going to be overflow, we know there's.
There'll be some
there
that
will
are
likely
guaranteed
be
for their
overflow.
use
I-
only.
I just
follow
wanna
you.
make sure that we're able to still account for that overflow.
Like we say, these 8 stalls are the ones that, 4 here, 4 here. Are the
It's
ones
just
that
what they
it.
have, that counts toward their
I think we wanna
requirement
be
for zoning.
careful in that. Is
That's
that we
kind
are not going to, my opinion, because I'm not a voter, but here at the table, but we should not make those stalls specific, those 8 stalls counted out specific for that residence, like no one else can park there. They would be, we're obligating him to be able to require him buying 8 parking permits for on-street parking overnight. If there's other residential units that are using those same stalls, they're gonna compete for those stalls, if that makes
Yeah, we're
sense,
not
right?
reserving.
We're not
stalls.
reserving them,
But
right?
Yeah.
number
Right.
four,
That's
the
what
city shall have the
Stalls,
discretion
not
to
particular
determine
spaces.
which on-street stalls shall be allocated as reserved parking for the applicant's use.
Yeah, and I put that in there because my thought was I wanted to have something in there that said, look, if down the road you felt like, hey, we have to have a reserved section here.
Because if
You have the
people
ability
have to
to.
park at Maple and they have to walk 3 blocks to get to their apartment, what's the point of having
Yeah.
a permit for them? Letting them count those stall stores when they're having to park 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and so to me, I wanted you to have the discretion, not the obligation, to be able to decide if that is or is not something you want
I
to do.
mean, maybe not at first, but if it becomes a problem where they're not able to be on that block area,
To me, it's city
Yeah.
parking that we're allowing them to count toward their total
Yes.
count so that the project can move forward, but I don't wanna use city parking being reserved for anybody. I just don't see that being a reservation thing.
Right.
where I feel like that would be out of touch to say the city by city ordinance, that these spaces are reserved for this person. And I don't have a problem with it being there because maybe that changes down the road, but I don't see that right now, that we would ever say these spaces owned and not, or owned and maintained by the city or for private use of these residences. I just don't see that being a thing. But either way, I'm okay with, again, I don't know if 8 is too many to anybody, but I'm okay with going up to 8, considering we
Yep.
still have final parking
8's good.
approval, so that we know we don't have to come back and revisit this later. And I don't have a problem with, maybe some combination of them, right, where maybe it's not 10%, but it's a combination of 1 and 3, where we're saying not to exceed 8, but, accounting for ADA, accounting them allowing some to be ADA.
Yeah, which definitely would be bigger spaces.
Right.
So I'm willing to
And the city has
acknowledge
to
that.
have ADA, and if they can
Yes.
count some of those ADA, then they don't have to eliminate parking spaces within the complex
Right.
to get their ADA parking.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I would
I
agree.
guess that's what I was thinking of with that. Because otherwise, we know we're already eliminating parking spaces inside to add ADA, and the city's still gonna have to have some outside anyway, because
Mhm.
it's part of our requirements, so.
So I think what you're talking about is on option 1, saying number of on-street spaces not to exceed 8 spaces of total spaces required, that's a lot of spaces.
Get another word in there?
Yeah,
And some
of
ADA
which may
spaces.
include ADA.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that for just a minute? So ADA stalls are larger, obviously. If he would come and say, I want all 8 of them to be ADA stalls, can we limit that to not more than half
Yeah,
How
can
many
be
is
ADA?
How many is?
Is it required to have
is-
like 3 total in the whole
No,
thing,
it's
isn't it?
required by the number of units, that's how it's calculated, and I
Right.
don't know, there's 4, should be
Four.
4 total, so,
I would think you'd
is there
want
any required on the city side?
some
for-
on-site
I don't know,
ADA, you'd
2
want
blocks
to
We got
require
2
some
on
on-site
site,
ADA.
don't we?
I think so.
So my
That
my
have to be
thought process
provided.
would be, you wanna say, of which no greater than 2 may be ADA compliant spaces.
okay.
Yes, let's limit that. Because 2 kind of makes sense, you butt them
Two
side by
inside.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right there, I mean, that's where I was going, that automatically means if we move inside, just based on last parking plan, we saw scrap at least
Yes,
one
there's
parking
one.
space.
Guess there's no EDA by the bank, is there?
No.
But that makes sense.
Well, that's all those bump
That-
outs.
it
They're
fits
wide.
within the
So we're
ADA,
saying-
That's what I like.
So we're saying
But
6
then you get
spaces
down
and then
Right,
additional
there
2
it is.
ADA?
I think we're saying, yeah, we're saying
Up to-
8 total
up to-
spaces,
yeah.
up
Because
to
we
2
have no
ADA.
ADA
Yeah.
parking in our downtown.
I like that.
Well, it's the yellow stripes, I guess.
And I think the messaging is clear, which is,
It's
you
not-
want
it's
to
not reserved,
ultimately, with
no.
the building plan set, approve as few as possible, right? So the onus is on the developer to come to you with as few as possible, and hopefully not 8, right?
Do we understand it enough for somebody?
I would move to introduce with the, option of 8, not to exceed 8 spaces and up to 2 ADA.
Not in addition, but
No,
as part
no.
of that
Yeah, total, yeah.
total.
I'd second that.
And this is a permit, right?
No,
Yeah,
this is
it's
a
a
conditional use
It's an
approval.
ordinance for conditional use.
Yeah, it's ordinance.
Okay.
We know what we're doing, we're all on the same page?
I think so.
I make a motion to waive the 3 readings, so we can keep this thing moving along. Motion to waive the 3 readings.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a discussion? vote on the motion to waive the 3 readings.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Okay. Vote on the final reading.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Rappel,
No.
Sweet,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
We got 4-1. Okay. On the backside of your agenda is the tabled business. It's appropriate, I think, to take that off the table. Somebody wants to.
I would make a motion to take it off the table.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Motion to take it off the table. Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, we can discuss it. We've held this until we got some of the other areas cleaned up, I believe, so we're ready for this one then. Which would be ground level apartments in C1, the ordinance 2398. Discussion.
So similarly with the other ordinance, these conditions were drafted with Jovan's review and included in here. So this is a little different than what was approved on first reading and second reading. So if you want to move forward, you would need to amend the ordinance
Correct.
and then move to final reading. But however you see fit with these conditions. Amend them, change them.
Well, that right there made sure we wouldn't limited parking to begin with.
Yeah, but when you had two separate ones.
Right,
Yeah,
I get it.
I wanted to at least acknowledge it in there,
Yeah,
but
fair
I knew
enough.
it was gonna be in here.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is what we've talked about the last several meetings for quite some time now.
Anybody else? Questions? Concerns, emotional outbursts? I would make a motion to amend, with these as written, move to third reading.
I would second that.
Okay, this is the third reading. It's amended now. Everybody understand the amendment, adding that other language?
Do we need to vote on the
We
amendment?
vote on the
No,
amendment,
amendment.
the last final reading, okay.
Ready to vote on the amendment? Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci.
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Now, the final reading, questions? Roll call on the ordinance 2398 as
A motion
amended.
to- We need someone to move to approve third reading.
I think Carl technically did within the
Okay.
same motion, so I think it's Carl and Stu
Okay,
again.
works for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Okay. Action items not requiring a public hearing, resolution 2022-28, amending the master fee schedule to update building permit fees. That is in your packet.
Absolutely.
So similarly to what I brought to you guys previously with some amendments to our fee schedule, Travis and I have been working to make sure that we're on the same page as other communities in similar size and that are developing at a similar rate to us. What you have in front of you first is the current fee schedule as it reads. The next is with the
I would just-
highlights.
Make a note here, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
it's
the
fine.
last time this was visited was October 1 of 2008. So.
So it is, yeah, just a little out of date. The highlighted page is our proposed changes to those, that fee schedule. We are looking at both the cost per square foot, as well as if you look further down, there is an adjustment when looking at the valuation fee. Right now, our current valuation fee only goes up to homes of $300,000. And up is how it's worded. I have spread those out a little bit so that it's a little more in line with how other communities are using their valuations. Behind that is one of the other things that we are discussing adding. A refundable deposit of $500 for a certificate of occupancy. And then if an individual would require temporary occupancy, an additional deposit of $750. They would have the ability to get that back as long as they met specific guidelines set out by Travis as far as what needed to be accomplished to during that temporary occupancy. And then lastly, there is a chart that shows our current valuation and proposed valuation for a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and $1 million home as compared to these other communities, which I surveyed to get our data.
So both of the, under D, both of them are refundable.
Under the occupancy deposit, yes.
Okay.
So I can speak a little bit to that, and maybe Travis can as well. Currently, we have a $250 occupancy deposit that's made when someone comes in, pulls a permit for a new home or any kind of major remodeling, and that is refundable, provided that they don't go around the permitting process, or that Travis doesn't have to do a lot of re-inspection during, to get final occupancy. And that has seemed to work. The majority of individuals get their full $250 refunded back to them when their final occupancy has been issued for the home. But there are times when the builder is pressed, or there's certain reasons why they want to get a temporary occupancy, and that temporary occupancy isn't given unless the home is safe to move into. But a lot of times what happens is those conditions that are listed on the temporary occupancy never get satisfied. And so we never get the project closeout, we never get final occupancy issued. And for the most part, the builder doesn't really care because it's $250, they're not really out a whole lot, and so they just move on to the next project. We've talked a lot about how we can keep that from happening. It's not that we're against temporary occupancy. I think it's appropriate in some situations, but there needs to be some teeth that Travis has to get them to put the railing on the deck, or to, I don't know, what are some other examples that are?
Finish the stone on the front. A lot of times it's mainly like a deck or deck steps, that linger on. They'll lock the door so that they can't access the deck, but never complete that, or it's a long period of time before they get that done.
Those specific things that are keeping the homeowner from a permanent occupancy are specifically listed out on the temporary occupancy permit, so.
A little more teeth, so the project gets finished.
Makes sense.
And I guess that as far as the fees go, most folks, when they come in and apply for a building permit, they have a price. And so the valuation fee that we have listed in this ordinance this resolution doesn't get used a lot. But the 2008 version that we are currently using is way, way under. So if someone comes in and says, I'm building a whatever square foot garage, and we do the calculation to determine the valuation, actually, the building permit fee is not on a level with those people who come in and say, I'm spending $500,000 on a house, if that makes sense.
Separates it.
That's not what it is,
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we amend the master fee schedule to update the building, the building fees.
I'll second that.
Second. Any other discussion?
When can we, I don't want this to get forgotten about again for another decade. Can we remind ourselves to review it a little more often?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll put a sticky note somewhere.
Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rappel,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Warford.
Yes, but can I ask a quick question? Where do these funds go when somebody applies for these permits? What, they just go to the city's general fund?
They
where
go
do
into
fees
the
go?
building and zoning fund,
Okay.
and they're used to cover Travis's
Travis's wages.
wages, as well as,
Mileage on the vehicle, fuel.
Office work or whatever.
Thank you.
Okay, number 2, approval of ordinance number 2414 for salary. I asked a while back for us to do a study to make sure we're in compliance with employment rules and regulations. Both Melissa and Joven have looked at this. We are in compliance with the way we handle our exempt employees primarily. And, but we did see a couple things, or you did, that we can change.
so, typically, the council has, over the past, I don't know, 5 to 7 years, done an annual salary ordinance. Actually, it's been done longer than that. And there's also been specific terms established when those salary ordinances are approved. There are 2 basic statutes that apply. One of them is when the mayor makes an appointment, the terms of that appointment must be established, and there's 2 options. It can either be for 1-year period, or it can be until the term of the mayor ends, so at re-election of the mayor. So you have the option of choosing one of those 2. We have gone with annually. This is moving to once during the term of the mayor. However, at any point, the mayor can unappoint someone, or you can have conversations with the mayor about removing someone from their appointed office. The second thing that is required is that you have to fix the salaries of any appointed officers by ordinance. And so we have done that, but the ordinance is always, it doesn't always catch up with when we do a cost of living, or when someone gets potentially is eligible for a merit raise. So what this ordinance is doing is referencing the pay scales that we have in place for all of those positions, which those pay scales are approved by you, by the council, anytime there's any changes that are made to them. So that it's attached as by reference to this ordinance. I don't know, Joven, did you have anything that?
Yeah, no, I think we wanted to make clear more than anything beyond what, in addition to what Melissa's saying, that the individuals as listed there are salaried employees, and thus classified as exempt. Our personnel policies as it relates to those individuals, we'll implement those. We'll also make a few little tweaks that Melissa and I have talked about, in terms of day-to-day, how people report hours and vacation and that sort of thing to address that. But I think this ordinance is sufficient to deal with the risk that we were concerned about, which is that individuals were treated as exempt employees, but it wasn't necessarily spelled out as clearly as we would like.
So we are making a change from an annual appointment. We have done annual, haven't we then? And now it's to the mayor's term, now it'll be every 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're still at will employees, so the mayor and where the council can still remove anybody. It's just not having to include and pass that ordinance every
Yeah.
year.
Right.
It specifically says
Yeah.
appointed until the end of the mayor's term of office,
Right.
and until their successors are appointed and qualified unless sooner removed, so.
Okay.
Questions?
I'm good. A motion to introduce the ordinance.
Second?
Second?
Motion to waive the three readings.
Second.
Roll call on the motion to waive three readings.
Creachy,
Yes.
Morford,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, number three,
Oh, you gotta
acceptance.
do the ordinance itself.
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Roll call on the final reading. Ordinance.
On the ordinance?
Yep. Creachy,
Yes.
Morford.
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Okay, acceptance of the 21-22 Keno report.
So the annual lottery report that needs to be submitted to the state is in your packet, the financials of it. In addition, as part of the report, Christina and I have reviewed the pay tables to make sure they're in line with what is presented to the public is in line with what is in the computers. We've gone through all of the deposits, and there's nothing that is out of ordinary. And this annual report is in lieu of an annual audit that we used to do when there was the ball draw system, but because it's a computer-generated numbers, there's much less opportunity for playing with the results of the game. Manipulation, yes, so the,
So this has dropped a little bit? Past years has been more, hasn't it, not total available for community betterment? I'm thinking historically, we're bigger numbers than that, but I don't have that in front of me.
yeah, and I
I was thinking 10 to 20 grand, and now it's 5. But I could be,
well, our
Most
keynote,
places have keyboard.
yeah, that's
Most
just
people play
usage.
it.
I'm
Right.
just thinking, we're trending down, basically,
The casinos will kill it.
yeah.
And just a unrelated question with the community betterment, where does that money normally go? Is there a specific, is it going general
So we
for
have a
Parks and Rec?
we have a separate checking account, which is referenced here on this report, community betterment account.
Mhm.
This was the beginning balance at the end of at the beginning of the fiscal year. At the end of the fiscal year, the reason why it jumped is there's a large cash prize fund that they're required to fund essentially. And when it reaches a certain threshold, then they make a deposit to us because technically that is the city's money. So we got a $20,000 transfer out of this prize reserve fund. If you'll see here, it was 43,000. And they dispersed money to us, so we have 68. Anyway, it's held separately, and the statute's clear on community betterment and how that can be used, and typically that is approved through the budget. Any expenditure of that is approved through the budget.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Can I ask one more question,
Yeah.
just because math doesn't math for me all the time? On the first page there, line 12, total available for distribution, 5,046 plus another $31 in interest, and it remained
Well, that-
5,046. I'm
That's
trying to
just
figure out
me not mathing either.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm like that. It doesn't look right to me
Right,
at all.
yeah, that's just,
Like
I
that's-
forgot to math.
that doesn't-
And you were doing
That
the
doesn't
audit
math
of
for
this
me.
account?
I was writing the numbers.
It's not, that doesn't add
So we have
very well. Like,
everything.
it says 12 plus 13,
Yes,
and I'm pretty sure that's not 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you guys do review that annually?
it
Yeah,
must
yeah.
be adjusted before I send it into the state.
Okay.
Well, with those math adjustments, I make a motion to accept the 2021 Keno report.
Second.
Second, any other questions?
I do have questions on the ordinance when it comes to Keno. How does this work in the city? I mean, right now, there's one establishment within the city that has Keno. I do know there are a couple others that would like to have Keno.
So, the city has, the voters approved having Keno as a game here in the city limits. We have, it's not an exclusive agreement, but we have an agreement with Four Sons Keno to operate Keno at a specific location. and that's in the form of an operator agreement that we have with them. There's no requirement or restriction for them on number of facilities where they have that game. So I do know that there is
So
an
what happens
investment.
if they do not wanna put it into a different establishment?
Then when our Keno agreement comes forward, typically they've been 10 years, maybe not that long, I'd have to pull it and look at it, but we would ask that that be written into it, that if there is an establishment that asks for the Keno game, I think that we could write that into the agreement. But I can.
The current agreement, or we have to wait until the current one expires and review?
No, so the last time this came up was a couple years ago, and we had to do a renewal of that agreement, was my recollection. And at the same time, there was somebody else that was looking into doing Keno in the community. And at that time, the council had decided to keep it as a one contract community. It was a little easier to audit and deal with. I think there had been historically maybe some issues with having somebody who wasn't quite as well known come into the area, not reporting things to the city. It was a bit of a pain. I do remember that the contract as presented called for exclusivity, but we amended it and took that out of the contract. So if that individual or that entity wanted to move it to somewhere else, they would be able to do so. If someone wanted to come into the community, they'd have to present a new agreement for consideration by this council, and the council would have the discretion to approve it if they chose to.
So if another business owner comes in front of the council and requests,
They could do
We
something.
have to act on it.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
they have to find an operator that's willing to make the investment.
Yeah, the hope was that if this is
Yeah.
my vague recollection. My vague recollection was the hope was that if there was another person that wanted to come in with Keno, they would reach out to the group that we already had an agreement with and would simply utilize Keno through them, as opposed to bringing in a new contract and all of that into the fold because of the past problems we had with other individuals.
But I will look at the agreement and I can get an answer for you.
I would like to speak to this if I could.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of insider knowledge on this. I'm James Kraft. I don't live in the city. I own a business here in the city. My little bit of insider knowledge on this is there is another business in town who wants to provide Keno, potentially more than one that wants to provide Keno. The current operator that the city has an agreement with will not even contemplate doing business in multiple locations.
Are there companies?
There
like
are
that that
other
do
companies
offer
who
multiple-
want to come in, but via not knowing whether there is an exclusive contract with said company that's currently operating with the city, or is there not a contract with them?
But can I just assure you that I will investigate and do some digging and present you with information?
The other two businesses that I know of that are contemplating this, they have reached out to a different Keno operator. And that Keno operator was also under the assumption that they couldn't come into Wahoo because Wahoo had an exclusive agreement with the current Keno operator.
And that's what, I think we need to review it and provide answers.
That's where some of this is coming from, and that's just my little bit of knowledge on the subject.
Okay.
And I did find it. I'll forward it to Melissa and we can look at it. It looks like it was just in 2021. It was June of 2021.
Didn't they change names? I feel like it was a name change or something like that is why we had to bring it up. Something about the operators.
Well, then it changed because the wheelhouse changed hands too.
No, oh, maybe
Yeah.
that's what it was.
I think that's what it
thought it
was.
was the Four Sons or whatever, something about that changed. But either way, yeah, it might have been.
Well, nonetheless, we need to look at it. Appreciate bringing it up. Appreciate your input. Okay, did we vote on?
No.
No,
Not yet.
We're ready to vote on the acceptance? We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Grapple,
yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Okay, number 4, North Highland subdivision. Again, wrapping up another done project. Put it that way.
And in your packet is the Final change order, which is adjustment of quantities again. The only item that I want to, I guess, point out to you is the, under Group B, the 7-inch concrete paving with integral curb. In the original plan set that was sent out to the contractors, the cul-de-sacs had a grassy area in the center of them, and the developer wanted to eliminate those. They got pushed back through the realtor to have those grassy areas, so that's where the majority of this additional concrete work came from, is a change order in that, so. And at the time that we had conversation on that, it was agreed that that is all developer costs. So when we go through the breaking out what is general obligation, what's special assessments on this project, that's something that will be under the developer's expense. Other than that, the punch list has all been met, and the change order, I think, is fair for this project, and so I would ask for you, I'd like it to be 3 separate actions, if you don't mind, a change order, final pay application, and an acceptance of the certificate of substantial completion.
A quick question. So is this the contractor then that was also doing the retention pond that we had some issues with? Has that been fixed? Is that good to go? We're not making any action on that. If there's a breach again, they come back and fix it, right?
Yeah, yes, the dirt work
Separate.
was separate from this project, yes.
Okay.
That was all by the developer.
Right.
Okay.
This is just for the water mains. All that sort of thing.
All right, I guess I make a motion to approve letter A, approval of the change order.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded for approval A, change order number 1. Any discussion? Roll call.
Creachy.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Sweet.
B,
Motion to approve letter B,
Second.
final.
discussion? Roll call.
Creachy.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
And C,
So moved.
Second.
So, does this mean that they're ready to go now and they can start selling lots and break ground?
They have been selling
They
lots.
haven't
Oh,
sold
I
lots
didn't
yet.
know if
They'll
I haven't
probably
seen
start
any
breaking
action.
ground
There's-
soon.
Got pretty cold, but.
We
I
have
haven't
not
seen
had
any
any
happening.
building permits filed, but.
There's-
But the lots are actually being sold now.
there's
They're
been
not-
some real estate
Making sure they weren't
transfers.
preserving what they're actually
That's
selling.
something that have been sold and resold.
Awesome. Great, as long as they're moving.
Other discussion? Roll call on C.
Creachy.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Number 5, discuss real estate acquisition. Ask that this go into closed session. What's the proper wording on that? now?
Yeah, so, again, as a reminder, there's 2 reasons we can go into closed session, both of which are for the protection of the public interest. Well, really 3, but 1 being if it's a personnel matter, we can go into closed session, but we have to advise the person we're talking about that they have the right to either elect it to be an open session or to closed session because it's to protect their private reputation. The second, and the most common one, is because there's the potential for litigation and/or there is active litigation. The third category is that we have a real estate transaction that's being discussed, because clearly it wouldn't be for the public's best interest for us to talk about numbers, proposals, those sorts of things in open session, because that information then would go to the prospective buyer or seller, and we'd lose the negotiating leverage that's important for the city. And so in this situation, we would propose to go into closed session for the protection of public interest as a result of a potential real estate transaction. Presumably, you would also ask Melissa and myself to participate in that closed session. Other things? Is there anybody else we need?
No, I
Yeah.
think just council and 3 of us.
Gotcha. I would make a motion that we go into closed session for protection of public interest and invite Jovan and Melissa to join us.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Warford.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Creachy.
Yes.